Hello and welcome back again, everyone. Today we are going to recap the part 2 of the Chinese movie named Wolf Warrior from 2017. At the beginning of the movie, a Chinese ship cruising the Indian Ocean is attacked by Somali pirates. Luckily, special ops soldier of the Wolf Warrior Brigade Lang Fang and his team were aboard the ship and fought back. Lang jumps off the ship and engages with the pirates in a hand fight underwater and wins. In the next scene, Lang and his team bring back one of their fallen comrades, Ash's home to his family. There, they find his mother pleading with the owner of a real estate company trying to demolish her son's house. Lang halts the machine surrounding the house, and they proceed to respectfully handle over his ashes to his grieving mother. Insensitively, the real estate owner interrupts this and tries to attack the soldiers. The police are called in the ensuing chaos and tell the soldiers to stand down. The soldiers comply until the real estate owner threatens the lives of the fallen comrade's family, promising to make them wish they were dead, which enrages Lang into attacking the man and killing him. Following the incident, Lang is delisted from the military and imprisoned for 2 years before being sent to a war-torn region in Africa. There, he worked as a security for a freight company, and he assimilates into the society easily. He is well-liked, respected, and even has a young god son, Tundu. He also enjoys spending his after-hours with them, as it soothes his loneliness and helps him forget his grief over his fiancée, Lieutenant Colonel Longshan's kidnapping. The Prime Minister of the country declares a state of emergency after a mass murder takes place by a local barbaric rebel group while the country is still reeling from and trying to control the Lamanla outbreak, which is a deadly endemic disease. One day, while Lang and Tundu enjoy an evening relaxing with the locals on the beach, an explosion is heard nearby, which marks the rebels' entry into the city. Then all hell breaks loose. As the nation's military and the rebels open fire at each other, many are caught in the crossfire, including Lang and Tundu, who flee to the local supermarket run by another Chinese man and a friend of Lang. After hiding for a bit there, the rebels are chased by the military into the supermarket and turn it into another war zone. Lang runs out of patience and tactfully attacks all the armed men one by one and temporarily restores peace. Moments later, a series of explosions are heard from nearby. Then Lang tells all the civilians in the supermarket to follow him to the Chinese embassy and leads the way with Tundu and the shop owner by his side. They leave the now battered supermarket into an even worse view of chaos outside, everyone screaming and running in all different directions, trying to get out of the way of the rebels, armed to the teeth with tanks and heavy artillery on one side, and the government's military returning fire on the other. Then, as they watch a bus filled to the brim with people being evacuated from the city by the military, is bombed by the rebels, leading to more bloodshed. Lang tries to save as many as he can and leads them all to the Chinese embassy. Finally, at the gate of the embassy, they are trapped as the rebels close in the street in front of it, pointing their machine guns and screaming slogans of their rebellion. The Chinese ambassador comes to their rescue. He asks all involved to cease fire to let his people in, citing China's and the country's long-standing relationship. They comply, and Lang and all the people around him, including the Africans, safely enter the embassy. Later that night, the Chinese embassy transports everyone that entered the embassy earlier to the coast to meet a Chinese fleet that was sent to evacuate all Chinese nationals. They travel all night through the crumbling city and reach the ship in the morning. Upon arrival, the Chinese ambassador calls the Prime Minister of the country and asks him to assign extra protection to Dr. Chen, who was still in the country working on a vaccine for Lamanla. The Prime Minister regrettably informs him that there's nothing he could do and hangs up. He is shot to death along with his ministers moments later for refusing to give up Dr. Chen's location to the rebel group. On the fleet, Lang shows the supermarket owner the unique bullet he wears around his neck, believing it has something to do with his fiancée's kidnapping, and asks him if he has seen anyone using the likes of it. The supermarket owner hesitatingly shares that the sign on the bullet belongs to the rebel group and that they're known to hire European mercenaries to carry out their mission. Then, just realizing that they are about to head to China, Tundu freaks out and starts hysterically crying for his mother. Lang calms him down and promises to find her. Later, Lang overhears a conversation between the naval captain and the Chinese ambassador, where the captain explains that he can't send any reinforcements yet without UN authorization, even though the ambassador begs him to consider the Chinese lives still left behind at the Chinese factory in the city, and of course Dr. Chen. Lang then volunteers to take the task of rescuing all those people without heeding the warnings that he will have no support and not even weapons from the military. On the other side of town, Commander Big Daddy, the head of mercenaries, gets an order from the head of the rebels to find Dr. Chen as soon as possible, and he sets out to carry out this mission armed with multiple heavy-duty artilleries and tanks. Then he sends his men to the hospital. Lang drives back to the city and decides to first look for Dr. Chen and makes his way to the hospital, where the mercenaries had arrived earlier and have started wreaking havoc. They order everyone on their knees and demand to know which one of them is Dr. Chen while threatening their lives. This goes on for a while until a brave young doctor speaks up, claiming to be Dr. Chen. The mercenary tries to check if it was true, but is interrupted by a man screaming that she's not Dr. Chen, but Dr. Rachel. The fuming mercenary shoots the man and proceeds to shoot Dr. Rachel, but is again interrupted as the real Dr. Chen attempts to stab him from behind, which prompts one of the guards to shoot the doctor. Lang drives his car through the window and comes flying in. He dismounts and goes around disarming and knocking out the mercenaries. He then gets to Dr. Chen, who tells him in his dying breath to look after his daughter named Pasha. Dr. Rachel, with Pasha in hand, runs to the car and starts it. Lang takes a weapon from one of the fallen mercenaries and shoots at the rest of them. He then gets in the car, still shooting out, and Dr. Rachel drives them out. The mercenaries collect themselves and follow them in multiple vehicles in a horrid car chase along the narrowest roads. They drive for a while, almost getting caught multiple times, but manage to escape and drive out of the city to the Chinese factory. During the drive, Lang reports everything to the naval captain via radio, who informs him that military aid is en route from China, but that in the meantime, he is still basically on his own. He adds that the fleet can only stay there for 18 hours more and hopes they can make it back there in time. Then Dr. Rachel notices a cut in his arm and is terrified, thinking he might have gotten it at the quarantine area at the hospital, which increases his risk of contracting the deadly illness. She cleans the wound before dressing it and tells him to watch out for the signs and symptoms. After some drive, they get to the Chinese factory, which is guarded by armed men. He gets out of the car and walks to the gate and declares that he is there to rescue them. The owner's son, Zhou, emerges from inside and confronts him, and even proceeds to threaten him with a gun, but is interrupted by Tundu's mom, who comes running through the men asking how her son was, which calms down the tension. Lang, Dr. Rachel, and Pasha are admitted into the office to discuss the current situation, while Tundu gets to speak to his mom via video call. Thinking there won't be enough space, the security head of the factory divides the workers into a Chinese and African group, which deeply unsettles them and infuriates Zhou, but he is unable to do anything about it. After some consideration, Lang declares that they will all leave together no matter what. This excites the workers, and they burst into celebration. They organize a bonfire party well into the night. The mercenaries, having found out Lang's identity, follow him into the factory and see the party and move in with an attack on the unsuspecting crowd. They send drone cameras and start their attack. Zhou's father, who was also in the military, fights together with Lang, an incredibly fierce battle with the mercenaries, whose main target was to abduct Pasha and to leave no witnesses behind. After a long and intense fight, where Lang saves Zhou multiple times, he is hurt and surrounded by Big Daddy and his crew without a way out. And just as they proceed to finish him off once and for good, the rebels' leader, having just found out what was going on, calls on them to stand back and retreat, annoyed and cursing. The situation, Big Daddy complies and drives back to the rebels' head, who is fuming beyond control. Just as they arrive, he starts screaming about how many times he should tell them not to mess with the Chinese, as China is a permanent member of the UN Security Council. Big Daddy, having heard enough, and to everyone's shock, stabs and kills him. Back at the factory, Dr. Rachel helps Lang to his feet, and inside, where everyone was gathered together for safety. As soon as he walks in, the head of security turns everyone against Lang, saying that they were safe and this kind of thing never happened before he arrived. Meanwhile, Lang keeps getting weaker and can no longer stand unsupported. Dr. Rachel checks his symptoms and the wound she had dressed the other day and concludes that he is infected with the Lambda virus, which shocks and scares everyone. For their safety, Lang decides to leave and walks out supported by Dr. Rachel and Pasha. They drive in the rain and find a small cave to stay the night. Lang, shaking with fever, sleeps hallucinating about his fiancée. The next day, Lang is completely fine. Dr. Rachel explains that Dr. Chen had discovered self-healing properties in humans, and of the thousands of cases of Lambda, he only found one with this ability, and that was Pasha, and that at the time of his death, he was working on a vaccine from Pasha's extracted serum. She also adds that she gave him that experimental vaccine the previous day, which helped him heal. Lang realizes that the rebels believe that they can rule over the country if they have Pasha. Then the trio discreetly come back to the factory to find everyone clustered in a room. Lang uses arrows he fashioned to silently kill the guards from the outside, then jumps through the window, causing enough distraction for everyone to attack the guard next to them. Once finished, Zhou, his father, and Lang lead everyone out of the factory, only to see they are completely surrounded by Big Daddy, who's basically taken over as the head of the the rebels and his crew. Then Lang calls the naval captain and informs him of the attacks on Chinese lives, and they agree for a helicopter to be sent right away. He then mobilizes women and children, including Dr. Rachel Pasha and Tundo's mother, aboard the helicopter, which is attacked moments after its takeoff and crashes, but without casualties. Everyone gathers to help the survivors out of the crash, and so are easily spotted by Big Daddy's crew. Thereafter, an excruciating battle ensues, involving tanks and heavy artillery. Zhou, his father, and Lang lead the response and give everything to keep the civilians safe. Lang films the ordeal and sends it to the naval base, which uses it to get authorization from the UN and launch missiles that destroy the rebels' army. Big Daddy is spared and shoots at Lang, who recognizes the type of bullet as it lands in his bulletproof vest as the one he's been looking to identify. Enraged and with revenge on his mind, he kills him. Moments later, convoy cars are sent for them to take them to the UN camp. On their way there, they pass through a war zone, safely flying their Chinese flag. They are received by an excited group of people, including the ambassador and the captain. The film ends with the image of a Chinese passport and the statement, "Don't give up if you run into danger abroad. Please remember, a strong motherland will always have your back." In the mid-credits scene, Lang is allowed by his commander to return to his military squadron and is shown a video revealing that Xiao Yun is still alive.